In this episode of Wanted, a Midlife Hobby, we are going to have an entertaining conversation with Calvin Tan, a charming magician from Philadelphia whose talent for sleight of hand is no illusion. Calvin will share some secrets about being a magician, though probably not the secrets behind any of his tricks. After listening, though, you might just want to conjure up magic as your next hobby. All right, I am very grateful to have an opportunity to talk with Mr. Calvin Tan, a magician whose many tricks and illusions I've seen a bunch of, and he blows my mind every single time. Calvin, thanks so much for taking some time out to talk with me.
Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on here and to talk about, what I consider art, right? I consider magic an art.
That's very interesting because I will tell you that on at least two of the prior discussions, I've gotten into discussions about whether the hobby is an art or a science as well. And normally I start out my question a little bit differently, but let's dive right into that. So it's all an art. I love that. Do you think there's any science that is attached to magic?
There's definitely science attached to it. We use the science to further the art, right? So the science is kind of, the audience doesn't see the science, really. It's kind of in the background, it's kind of hidden. But magicians throughout the years have used a lot of science, have used a lot of technology to create the illusion of magic. And that's kind of the goal, right? I consider magic the art of wonder, right?
Oh, nice.
So it's an art that's unique in a way that it happens in our minds. Like physically in the real world, obviously magic isn't real, right? There's just certain rules that we have to live by in this world. But to create the illusion of the impossible, we use a bunch of techniques, whether it's sleight of hand or psychology, and that creates the wonder in your mind. I always like to say magic is the gift of wonder. It's a gift that I can give people when I perform. And then if I tell you how it's done, I'm actually taking away that gift, right? Because then you lose the wonder of whatever I just performed or whatever you just saw on TV.
So you're setting the stage right now. You're not going to tell me how you do any of your tricks. That's really what you're trying to tell me right now, right?
Not specifically, but I can give you hints and things like that.
Okay.
So if you keep listening, yes, you'll get some of the, how we magicians operate and how we think about things. And it does drive my wife nuts because I don't tell her how things are done.
You don't even tell her, huh?
No, but I give her the same speech that I just gave you. It's, I can't take a gift away from you. I can't take that gift of wonder. As a magician, I pretty much agreed to not have that gift of wonder anymore. Because for me, since I know how it's all done now, and I'm watching other magicians, I don't have the same reaction as a layperson. So that's what I had to give up to become a magician.
Okay.
But what I get back from that is when I perform for people and I give them that gift of wonder, I see their reaction, and that's the feedback they give me is that to me is worth giving up that gift.
So go back in time for me then, before you started giving this gift out of wonder to other people, and how did you actually get started in the first place? What turned you on to magic in the first place?
So growing up, I've always loved watching magic on TV. Whenever there was magic on TV, I think it was The World's Greatest Magic. David Copperfield would be on. My dad would call me and it's like, Calvin, there's magic on TV. Come watch, and I would, and him and I would love watching magic on TV. And, I think it started there, but I never pursued it as a kid because I've always thought that you needed to know a magician to learn magic. I thought it was this closely guarded secret that was just handed down from person to person. And I didn't know any magicians, so I figured I would never be able to learn.
Oh, that's interesting. How'd you finally break through?
it was, I think I just kind of sat around one day and thought, I wonder if there's a book on magic I could buy. So I went down to the local bookstore, Barnes and Noble, and I kind of looked and I found a book called The Complete Course in Magic by Mark Wilson. And it was a beginner book, but it had a little bit of everything in it. It had magic with playing cards. It had magic with coins. It had magic with, it even had some magic with like some basic stage illusions that you could make out of stuff at home. So it was kind of nice to have that book of everything and kind of try these different aspects of magic and kind of figure out which direction I wanted to go in.
And which direction did you start going in? I mean, are there such things as like themes for how people? Because I know, like you said, there's these. I've seen the specials on TV, and sometimes people are thematically, they're card trick specialists, I guess, where there's. Are there typical themes that are associated with how people do?
Yeah, so I would say there's probably 3 different types of magic. There's the close-up magic, or most recently, it's kind of been known as street magic after David Blaine, because he just went out on the street and did close-up magic. And that's usually magic that happens in front of people real close, usually with everyday objects, with playing cards, with, money, with, anything that you can find. And that's primarily what I specialize in, close-up magic, as you've seen. And then there is parlor or stand-up magic, where it would be for maybe a crowd of 100, 200 people, where you stand up in front of everyone. And I also do that. In that kind of performance, certain close-up magic tricks won't work because people won't be able to see. So it's a little bit different.
Okay.
And then there's stage magic, where you're talking about an auditorium where you're up on a big stage and you're talking about hundreds of people in the audience and the spotlight is on you. And obviously you can't do close-up magic on a big stage when you have 300-400 people, unless you had, someone like a projector or something videotaping you. So it's all very different. I have done every single one of them. And there are, little subtle things that are different between each of them.
What do you like best?
I love the close-up magic because that just happens right in front of people. I get to connect with people better. It's harder to connect when you're up on stage away from people. It's easier when you get to interact with people one-on-one, and talk to them and actually maybe borrow an object from them and do some magic with that borrowed object.
And I will say to anybody who is listening, one of the unfair pieces is we've got an audio version of this. We don't have the visual, because I'm positive that even right now, as I'm sitting looking at you, because at least I get to see you on the Zoom call, Calvin, you've probably got some kind of magic trick that's either in your pocket, in your hand, or something like that you're ready to turn out at any point, where, in the grocery store or wherever you are. How close am I with that assumption?
100%. Being a close-up magician, you're always prepared. And, sure, there are trick decks out there that kind of do the work for you. But the problem with learning those tricks with those specific decks of cards is, if you don't have them, you can't perform. So what are you going to do? Carry around 5 different decks of cards that can do 5 different unique tricks, or learn how to do the sleight of hand with a regular deck of cards? So if somebody gave you a deck of cards, you could do the same trick. If somebody gave you a couple quarters, you could do a whole magic routine with it. If someone gave me a pen, I could do, I could use it as a magic wand and make things disappear and reappear. So it's, that's the key to being a good close-up magician, is to kind of, be very versatile with learning how to do magic with everyday objects. So it doesn't matter where you are, you can still perform.
That's fair. Do you have to have a certain kind of personality type to be a magician, do you think?
I don't think so, because, on the surface, people assume that you have to be outgoing, very personable, and not shy. But on the inside, I'm very, very shy. And, I remember in high school and college, I would be deathly afraid of being in the spotlight, being up in front of people, giving a presentation. It is just the nerves would get to me and I would freeze up and I would forget. And learning magic and being in the spotlight has taught me to be very comfortable as the center of attention, which is the complete opposite of who I am, right? I'm an introvert, Yeah. So I do credit learning magic with helping my confidence of speaking in front of people, of interacting with people, and not having that shyness or that fear hold me back.
Oh, that's great. Okay, that I didn't anticipate. Because but let's say, so good. You're taking off the table whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, or even an extroverted introvert, as people would talk about, right? But are there other kind of traits that you really need to be? Do you need to be a certain kind of organized thinker? Do you need to be somebody who's wild and carefree? I mean, are there other kind of personality traits, or do you really think that pretty much anybody can do it?
For myself, I would have answered that you kind of do need to be organized, because in your head as a magician, you always have to be one step ahead of everyone. So that's one of the first things you learn as being a magician, is you always have to be one step ahead of everyone so you can anticipate, so you can be prepared for anything that comes up. Now, I have a friend that's a magician, and he's done quite well. He's consulted for David Blaine. He's actually a creator of magic tricks. So he creates magic tricks and he puts it out to the community. But his mind is I don't even know. He's all over the place. And I would not say he's organized. I would not say any of that, but he is a fantastic magician. So I really don't think that, I really think that anyone can be a good magician as long as they put the work into it. And, some of those personality types might actually help in different ways. Like for him, he's because he's so out there, he's a very good outside the box thinker. So that's why he's a very good creator of magic. And he's put out a bunch of tricks in the magic communities that people love, because he's able to think in a way that's just so different and just so unique from a different perspective. And, he's very successful because of that.
How you mentioned also, I'm going to go back for a second, because you said you got to put in the work. What does that mean? I mean, so I'm somebody, I love watching you perform. I love watching how all of a sudden 5 quarters becomes 3, becomes 7, becomes 5 again, and all these different, what does putting in the work mean?
I guess with anything, whether it's art or it's music, or, you first have to put in the work for practicing, right? So if it's specifically CloseUp magic, the sleight of hand, right? How to, learn how to palm a coin. It doesn't happen overnight. It just takes practice. You just got to keep doing it and keep doing it. Even getting comfortable, for example, with a deck of cards in your hand. You could put a deck of cards in my hand right now, and I can tell you if it's a full deck or not just by the way it feels.
Really?
Where it sits in my hand. And that's just one of those things where you put in enough time where it becomes second nature, so you don't have to think about it, right? So the good thing about magic, especially close-up magic, is that you can sit in front of the TV and do this. You don't have to, be in specifically, with big stage illusions, maybe you have to, have those around and keep practicing, but you can sit around with a TV with a deck of cards or coins in your hands or whatever everyday object and practice the sleight of hand part. So I would say that's the first part of it. The second part is you have to perform for people, because the psychological part of magic is just as important as the mechanical part. So, once you learn how to do your different card controls or sleight or palming and all that, then you have to learn how to perform for people, because everyone will react differently. And by performing for people, you learn how they'll react. And by the different reactions you get, you'll learn how to adjust your performance, whether I need to because as a close-up performer, I get surrounded sometimes by people, and there are bad angles sometimes. depending on which sleight of hand you use. So you learn how to block, how if I'm going to do a certain move, maybe I turn and talk to the person on my left, so my back blocks my bad angle for a second, and I turn back. Maybe it's just the way I hold a card, or sometimes, I know this is an audio podcast, but sometimes if I have a person holding a playing card and I don't want them to turn it over as I'm talking to them, I can hold my hand and gesture right on top of the playing card. So it kind of blocks them from turning over the card. So it's little subtle things like that you learn by just performing for people, because I don't want them to turn the card over prematurely, right? So it's those little things that you learn psychologically on how to deal with people, where to position people, that you can only get from performing for people. So I would say, if you're starting out in Magic, maybe it might take you a good 3 months to learn whatever mechanics for a trick, but then you should also perform for 3 months for friends and family to get that the psychological part to it, to learn how people are going to react and anticipate. And that's how you learn how to be one step ahead of everyone, is you learn that anticipation.
That's an awful lot of practice. I mean, 3 months for 3 plus 3, I guess, right? Was what you said. So just even for every time you're pulling out a new trick. How long? And tell me
to be comfortable.
To get comfortable with it. Okay. How long have you been doing this? Like, you don't have to tell me what age you were, but like how many years have you been?
Well, I started late, so I wish I started earlier. So I actually played guitar through school, high school and college. And then I got into Magic right after I graduated college, right when I started working. So I've been doing it for 15 years.
Okay.
So I am, I guess that kind of tells you how old I am.
Younger than me, so that really.
But I, in the beginning, yes, to be comfortable with it, it takes a good 6 months for, I would say, every trick to be very comfortable with it, just because you're not used to it yet. But as you continue your journey in Magic, I would say after 2 solid years, when your hand develops the feel for palming coins or a deck of cards, then like now I can learn a trick in maybe a day, 2 days, depending on, how difficult it is.
Okay. So one character trait we left out was extreme patience. For if you want to be able to do it in 2 weeks, you're not going to be able to do this hobby, huh?
Yeah. It's also there's also a psychological barrier, right?
Tell me more
because, for yourself is, if I'm pointing, but I'm palming a card, most people will not be comfortable with this, because there's really bad angles on this. There's only really one good angle for this particular palm that I know that you guys listening can't see, but it's really the best angle is from the front. But any angle from the side, you will
his body, and I couldn't see a thing. And then he flipped his hand over, and all of a sudden there was a card there. That was amazing.
Yeah. So pretty much the best angle is straight on, right? Yeah. But any side angle is terrible for this particular palm that I'm doing on camera. I know that you guys can't see, but the person in front can't see it. But obviously, me as the performer, I'm staring right at the card. And it's very nerve-wracking when you're starting out in Magic, because I can clearly see the card, even though the person in front can't, but it's sticking out like a sore thumb to me. So there's a lack of confidence, because I feel like I'm very exposed right now, because I know that the only good angle is the front of me, but everywhere else is pretty bad. If I had someone to the left of me, if I had someone to the right of me, it's pretty bad. But it's the confidence of holding it and knowing that the person in front of me can't see it. So psychologically, I have to get over that fear that I'm in a vulnerable position. So Magic is, so as a magician, it takes a while to get rid of that psychological fear of being vulnerable when, all right, I know that if I'm just one-on-one with somebody, I know that I'm safe, and be okay with it, even though I'm staring directly at the card, but no one in front of me can see it. So that's a little bit of the psychological barrier that you as a performer have to get over.
So that's great. Stay tuned after the break and we'll return to Wanted, a Midlife Hobby. Now, in terms of learning, like the kinds of tricks, even before you get to the confidence, but just understanding, like you were saying, how to hold it and things like that. I mean, you mentioned a book by Mark Wilson. Do I have that name right? Is that what you said? Right? Yeah. So you said a book by Mark Wilson. Are there other places where there's, I'll say, instruction for starters, whether it's about these gestures, whether it's about how much you do it, how little? So in other words, if there's somebody out there that's like, well, I'd love to try to give this a shot and just to kind of see, where do you start? What kind of resources are out there that would help you?
Okay, so these times are great with technology today. When I started out, the internet was around, but a lot of the magic instructions were either in books or VHS. But luckily, when I started, it was the start of DVDs coming out for magic, and that kind of makes it easier to learn, right? Learning from a book is kind of difficult. The good thing about learning from a book for magic is that it forces you to put your own presentation to a trick, which makes it uniquely to you, which makes it a little more personal, which lets you connect with the audience a little better if you have your own personality involved in the trick. That's a good thing about with a magic book. But with a DVD or a VHS, you're kind of just copying somebody else's presentation, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of start out that way before you start looking at it and kind of changing it to fit your style. Now DVDs are going away. Nobody gets a DVD player anymore with their computer. So streaming video downloads makes it super easy now, because then you could pause, you can move back, you could scrub back and relearn a trick, or I didn't get that certain move. Let me rewind it and let me watch it over. When before it was kind of more of a pain, right, with VHS and things like that. So there is a lot of magic on YouTube. There is a lot of bad magic on YouTube. So I would not recommend learning from YouTube, just because if you want to be good at magic, you don't want to learn bad habits, right? It's the same with playing an instrument. It's the same with anything else. If you start with those bad habits, you'll have to try and break those bad habits later, which is very, very hard.
Okay.
So I would say don't randomly go on YouTube to learn magic. I would find a resource. There are a lot of famous magicians out there that put out magic. So if you see a famous magician performing on YouTube, most likely they have released something to the magic community. Like Shin Lim, who won America's Got Talent, he released a couple. He's been releasing tricks all his life, actually. And you can buy his stuff. Just Google, search him and his magic products, and you'll find it. Read a lot of reviews online about magic tricks before you buy them, because that will help too.
Okay.
So today with the internet, it makes it easier to find magic, but the tough part is filtering out the bad magic, right? Because you don't want the bad habits. There are magic clubs that you can join. I am a part of 3 magic organizations: the Society of American Magicians. We meet, the third Thursday of every month in Philadelphia. International Brotherhood of Magicians, and then the London Magic Circle. There are virtual magic clubs too that you can join. Each of those has, I think, a virtual assembly that you can join if there isn't one in your city. Most major cities will have a magic club. So look for that. And when you get together with other magicians, I credit that with my learning, my learning curve, went way down, because when you get together with other magicians and they can give you feedback, you learn so much quicker and you get better just from that feedback from another magician's perspective. So yeah,
what was the toughest part? I mean, if those things are helping you, what was the biggest challenge you had as you were trying to really get going in this, or even now? I mean, what's the biggest challenge about performing magic?
Performing, well, it's, I think it's easy for me to entertain now, right? Like I have enough tools to entertain. But my goal isn't necessarily to just entertain. I talk about, I see magic as an art form. I want to create a memory that people will not forget, So that's my goal. Like if you're just out there entertaining, and I did a bunch of magic tricks and I asked you, if you would tell a friend what you saw me do, it would kind of just be kind of disjointed. Oh, he just did a bunch of cool stuff. Like maybe he made some stuff appear and disappear. But I really want to create a memory where somebody really remembers the performance and really connects with it on a personal level. So that's kind of my goal with every magic trick that I try and come up with, is to create a memory. How do I connect with people? How do I make something matter to them, that even if it's a one single playing card, it means nothing, right? I could do a card trick and somebody could go, oh, he just did some card trick. But if I can make that card trick mean something to somebody, they'll remember. They'll always remember that memory of that specific card trick and what happened in it.
Is that where your style, your personality that you were talking about, it kind of, I guess, manifests itself?
Yeah, I would say so, because, in order, like, I have to be genuine, right? If I'm not genuine in what I'm presenting, then I think people will see that and there'll be a disconnect between. I never want to get into the position where it feels like I'm the magician and I am just trying to trick you for the purpose of tricking you.
Okay.
I don't want to get into that kind of position where it's almost like a one-upsmanship kind of deal, where I'm not there to one-up anyone, or to show people that I'm better than them because I can change a $1 bill into a $100 bill, right? That's not my goal. I don't want to get into that battle of, look at what I can do. I want to give people some kind of meaning in whether it's a metaphor with something I do with the illusion of magic, or maybe have them, think of maybe connect with like a memory of something that means something personal to them with the metaphor of a specific magic trick.
I like that. And now I will tell you that it would not bother me at all if you had a superior air, if you took all of my $1 bills and turned them all into $100 bills. I would be okay with that, just to make sure you know. So if you ever felt like you wanted to go ahead and put on those kind of airs, I'm very happy to give you, 10 $1 bills and we can work it out. Just throwing it out there for you, Calvin. All right. So I wanted to ask you also, I know it feels like I keep circling back, and so much for my own organized thinking. I guess that could be a precursor to whether or not I'm going to be able to do well at trying out with magic. But the putting in the time, and you mentioned it kind of from a length of time period that you would spend learning, and then over time, and then practicing and everything. But like, if I had to get more nuts and bolts, because I imagine there's a decent number of folks listening to this. If you're starting this as a hobby, you're probably already working a full-time job, which, today is anywhere between 37 and a half hours and 60 hours plus a week, right? So how does somebody who's working a full-time gig, how do they get started, do you think, in terms of managing time? And what do you think makes sense?
The best thing would be just to kind of do it for your. Magic is good in the fact that you can kind of do it for yourself at first. So it's not really dependent on other people. So you could sit down, whether it's with a bunch of coins or some money or playing cards, and all you have to do is just learn one trick. Find a trick that you like and just kind of work on that. And you can work on that on your own time, like the different parts of it, until you get comfortable, where you're ready to perform it for people. And then you go into, performing it for a bunch of friends and family, right? Because those are probably the people that you want to perform for first before other people in public. So
assuming your friends and family are nice people and tolerant.
Yes, yeah. But they're also but they'll also tell you if it's not good, which is what I want, right? Like you want that, right?
Yeah.
You don't ever want to go, not listening to the feedback you're getting from people. So you want people to be honest with their feedback with you. So friends and family is probably the best. And the cool thing about that is that unless you're at home all the time and not interacting with anyone, all you need is to take whether those deck of cards or those coins to wherever you're going and just like, hey, can I show you something I'm working on, and perform for them and get some feedback and keep doing it. So you kind of can do it on your own time. I test magic tricks out on people all the time. I test them out on if you're, in an office and I'm there and there's some downtime. I'm like, hey, you take a look at something, or the end of the meeting, there's a couple minutes left,
Mm-hmm.
I get to test out things and, that's the time to test out things instead of when you're getting paid to do it, and you get that feedback on, magic is also, you kind of want to build your performance like a roller coaster too, right? So like, which, is this the ending I want, or can I make it better if I, did this a little differently? And you'll get that from performing. It's also, also don't get intimidated by, the sleight of hand having to be perfect. Because once you start learning the psychology of it, the misdirection, some of the sleight of hand might not matter. For example, if I'm doing a card trick and I have cards in my hands and I'm talking about the card trick, and I'm engaged, so I'm leaning forward and I'm doing this card trick for people. And then I pause for a second and I lean back. And then I lean into and lean forward again and continue with the card trick. Psychologically, your brain will automatically pause that moment in time and actually cut that out. So when you recall that magic trick, your brain will actually eliminate that moment that I paused, lean back for a second, maybe made a joke, and then lean back in and continue. Your brain will automatically cut that out of the performance when you recall it. So we magicians take advantage of that. So in that moment, I can do the worst card palm, I could do the worst card control, whatever. It doesn't have to be perfect if nobody sees it, right? So like we take advantage of moments like that psychologically. We also, I know that everyone's going to look where I'm looking. So if I look to the right, everyone's going to look to the right. If I look up and I ask you a question, you're obviously going to make eye contact with me. As soon as you make eye contact with me, I know you're not looking down at my hands. And that I could do the sloppiest, worst, card control to get your card wherever I need it to be in that moment. And I know you're not going to see it because you just made eye contact with me because I asked you a question, So it's like, that's a psychological part to magic also. So don't get intimidated with needing to get everything perfect in terms of the sleight of hand, because sometimes the psychology helps you out with that. And it doesn't have to be, perfect as if you can misdirect, just as well.
Did you learn the psychology stuff naturally? Did you already get it, or did you pick it up? How did you? I mean, because those little tricks are phenomenal, or certainly fascinating. I mean, how did you learn that kind of stuff?
It's by learning different magic tricks. I think you pick it up along the way. Different magic tricks use a bunch of different psychological principles sometimes, and I can't tell you one specific trick. It's just a bunch of different tricks that I've learned over the years that use these different principles in magic. That over time, just by learning the tricks, you pick them up, and it really helps you become a better performer. Or it's also feedback from other magicians, right? If you join a magic club, I'm like, I'm having a problem with this magic trick. I keep putting this card in the person's hand, but they keep turning it over before I want them to, what can I do? And, other seasoned, magicians will go, oh, have you tried holding your hand over their hand, kind of blocking them from doing it as you're gesturing or as you're talking. So it's like the little things like that, that also other magicians, their feedback definitely helps too. But also in these magic tricks that you can buy, they'll sometimes have those little psychological tips in there. The thing with magic clubs also is they have lectures from famous magicians that come through.
No kidding.
So a magician will come through and lecture, or a magic convention, they'll have a bunch of lecturers. And you learn those psychological from these guys that have done hundreds and hundreds of shows. So they've seen just about every single kind of reaction, and they can, help you out before it happens to you. They'll give you tips on, you want to make sure you do this, make sure you want to turn your body when you do this or gesture like this,
I can't imagine how much fun one of those conventions must be.
It is fun. It's, it's one of those things where you go to it and you end up staying till midnight or 2:00 in the morning in what we call sessioning. We just kind of get together and we just, hey, I've been working on this, you mind me showing you? And it's kind of just magicians jamming out on magic, until 2:00 in the morning.
Oh, that's great. Oh my gosh. Okay. So what started me down that path, obviously, was getting a better understanding for, your time investment. Apparently there's a lot of brain investment. What about monetary investment? If somebody is doing this, how much does it cost a lot to get started to do these kinds of things? I mean, how would you characterize the investment?
It absolutely does not cost a lot to get involved in something like this. However, a lot of magicians end up spending way too much money on magic because you get into that mindset of, it's kind of like a musician where they go, oh, if I bought that new violin, or, oh, if I bought that new guitar, I can sound like that. It'll allow me to sound like that if I buy it. If I buy that $2,000 guitar, then I can play like Slash, know? And that's not the case, right? It's not the instrument, it's the person playing the instrument. So it's the same thing with magic. It's, you can start out with just what you have at home, everyday objects. It's, unless you want to buy trick decks and trick coins or trick whatever, gimmicked items, you really can just use regular everyday objects and just learn to sleight of hand with it. Obviously, I use silver $50, Barber silver $50. They're early 1900s, and they're made back when coins had real silver in them. They just look flashier, but really you don't need a silver $50 or dollar. You could just use a quarter, which that's what I use starting out. I just use the $50 because they're more visible now. And the weight to them, they just kind of feel better. Yeah. But there's no reason you can't use quarters. I started out using regular quarters. Somebody handed me change, I could do magic with it. So it doesn't cost that much to start. I will say that magic tricks are, the price of magic tricks are inflated because they say you are buying the trick and not the actual items. You're buying the secret. So if there was a trick that involved a deck of cards, they might sell it for $30, even though that deck of cards only costs like $5, because you are buying the secret behind it. So in the magic community, tricks are usually inflated in cost because of that. What you do have to watch out for is that sometimes I see a lot of magicians, they get caught in the magic is real kind of state where they see a trailer for a new magic trick and it looks so good and they spend $100 on it and they realize that it's not actual magic on how you achieve that trick. Sometimes you get caught up where something looks so good, like, for example, a trick that, let's say I take a coin and I put it in a soda bottle, right? In a sealed soda bottle. It looks so good in the trailer and it looks so clean in the trailer how it's done. And okay, I'm going to spend $100 because I want to learn how to do this trick. And you buy it and you learn that, there's some kind of device that does all this, and it's not real magic, right? It's how you do it. It's not real magic. It's not like you can just throw the coin in and it's inside, right? There's a lot mechanically going on. So people kind of get caught up in that, and they kind of get discouraged when it's like, I spent $100 for this trick, but it's not what I thought it would be. Well, yeah, because it's all an illusion. So people do get caught up by, right now, because of the internet, and you do have more accessibility. Magic tricks are kind of done in like those movie magic trailers now. It's all like a lot of hype now when you see these magic trailers of like these new tricks that come out, and you just have to, not get caught up in that hype. And it's the greatest thing that's coming out, that it's going to allow you to have these like superpowers,
Right. Like the movie Now You See Me.
Yeah.
I looked at that and I thought, okay, there's probably a lot of magicians out there that don't like that movie.
Well, actually, some of that, I actually watched some of that. Some of that is, some of the sleight of hand in that is actually spot on. I think I had a consultant for some of the sleight of hand where, they tossed, I think there was a card they were hiding from security or something. That was spot on, that one. But yeah, a lot of those movies, they kind of just use CGI to, the easy way out to do it.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess that's a good gig if you can afford it, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, very good. Okay. I want to ask you just two more questions. One of them is the opposite end of the how much does it cost? Because I know that you also do go out and you perform. You mentioned that earlier. I've seen you do it, of course. One of the reasons I asked you here is just because watching your performance, you've blown my mind so many times. And that's why I wanted to pick your brain on it. What role to you, how important is it to go to these kind of paid performances in terms of your passion around the magic?
I think it's very important, because I do consume a lot of magic. I do watch a lot of magic, and that's because I'm constantly looking for inspiration. I do see a lot of bad magic, which is also good, because that teaches you what not to do. So I do consume a lot of magic. It's good to keep up with, what's going on out there. And I also don't want to copy it. I try not to copy anyone, right? So there's obviously always independent creations that kind of end up happening, where I see someone and do something that I thought I created, and it's like, oh, okay, wow, that ship has sailed. That person already performed it on TV. Maybe I shouldn't do it. So there's that aspect of it. But it's also, I would say, as an art, you should also consume other art, because you do want to keep the passion for it, right? Because once you lose the passion, it's all done, right? The worst thing is to perform when you're not passionate about something, to do something you're not passionate about. Mm-hmm. So I do consume a lot of magic, but I also consume a lot of music. I consume a lot of movies. I have another hobby that I had to do that I think helps, photography, because I find inspiration in looking at things from a different perspective, which is always a good thing. And that, any kind of art helps. That's not specifically your art will help you evolve as an artist.
So we'll bring you back season 2 to talk about photography as a hobby, I guess. We'll have to come back to. We'll just keep picking your brain for the next couple of seasons. Something else that you work on. That'll be great. All right, I have one final question, and we'll kind of wrap up with this one. If I was going to pursue magic as a hobby, what is the one most important piece of advice you would give me?
I would say, this is a tough question. I would say, be yourself. Don't try and be anyone else, because I do see a lot of magicians that are starting out, and they want to be exactly like whoever their idol is in magic. But the problem with that is that magicians are very protective of their own performance. You can't copyright magic. You just can't copyright magic tricks. It's not something you can patent. Maybe illusion boxes you can patent, but then once you do that, it's in public domain and other people can, find how those work. So you can't copyright magic. So magicians are very protective of, their character, what they've developed, and then their performance and their tricks and stuff like that. And you don't ever want to be a copy of someone. You want to be yourself. So I would say when you start learning magic, whatever trick it is that you're learning, don't copy whatever straight out performance is, whether it's in the video or in a book or, in DVD or whatever, or what you see on TV. Put your own spin to it. Put something that means something to you in that trick. And that will make you, the best magician you can be, because people will connect with you. They'll know that you're genuine. They'll want to interact with you. They'll want to talk to you. And it doesn't become this fake persona that sometimes, that happens. And people can see that. People can see when you're not being real, when you're being something else. So I would say be yourself.
That is perfect advice. I'm glad that you spent some time here with me being yourself. I definitely see it when you perform the magic. It is great. So Calvin Tan, thank you so much for joining me here. I really do appreciate it, man. It was a lot of fun. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out our Instagram page, which you can find at midlife_hobby, or follow us any place you can find podcasts, including Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And of course, when you find something you like, you should always tell a friend about it. Also, I'd love to hear thoughts and suggestions about other hobbies or speakers. Send an email to midlife.hobby@gmail.com. I'll do everything I can to follow up with you. Special thanks goes to Anandita Das for this episode's inspiration around hobbies. Anandita is an author who most recently published a book titled What the Pandemic Learned from Me. And she said, "Distractions are magical, especially the kinds you call hobbies. They take your mind off all the inescapable toxicity and make you feel like there's so much more to life than just paying credit card installments before due dates." Hope you'll join us next time for Wanted, a Midlife Hobby.